After making the cinematic 12 Titans tournament, League of Rockets has made the Rocket League World Cup, a pre-recorded tournament featuring several iconic Rocket League pros representing their country. 16 teams from around the world competing in a tournament similar to the FIFA World Cup format, even including countries like Japan, Brazil, and Australia. Introduction to the tournament is well made. It starts with the narrator introducing the tournament, while orchestrated styled music and Rocket League footage plays in the background, ending with the World Cup logo. The narrator continues to speak as we see a mountain in the background and hear the crowd cheering. At this point, he's just here to explain the tournament format though. As I mentioned previously, the tournament is basically the FIFA World Cup, including the matches only being a best of one. This is something that is very common in soccer, but very uncommon in the Rocket League scene. Although a best of one may be controversial for some, it wasn't for me. I think it was good for pacing and preventing things from dragging out too long. If this was a big competition like RLCS, I would have had a problem with it, but since League of Rockets tends to go for a more cinematic feel, I find the format to be fitting. In the next scene, the narrator introduces us to both teams competing in the match. This is something the narrator does for each team before their match. This gives the viewer a chance to know about the team's captain, the players on the team, and a certain narrative around them. For example, the narrative around USA is how team captain Kronovi teams up with his rivals to compete for the World Cup. In most cases, the narrator of the team is just mentioning the achievements each player has at the club level, though, for the most part. While the narrator talks about the team, we see the players making plays together. This method gives the viewer a good idea of how each team plays and the experience each player has. Although we see intros in day one, we don't see much of it afterwards. Unfortunately, this also causes the narrator to disappear for most of the World Cup, which is kind of weird. In the 12 Titans, the narrator had a big role, having the presence of an omnipresent being, observing champions battling from afar. One could argue that his voice doesn't fit well in the World Cup, but at the same time, that voice is dang beautiful. He could narrate an episode of Arthur, and I wouldn't bat an eye. But in all seriousness, it seemed like he wasn't needed very much. The commentators were pretty much running the show from a narrative standpoint, compared to complimenting the narrator and scenery as they did in the 12 Titans. As you watch the matches, you'll notice they are taking place in Manfield Stadium with some slight variations. Upon observation, you can see there is white chalk drawn in a rectangle around the field, making it look like a normal soccer field. You can also see the World Cup logo on the pitch and the ball, while 2017 is displayed on the Jumbotron. I must admit, the changes to Manfield made the tournament seem unique, which is how I see these tournaments made by League of Rockets. They tend to be pretty unique thanks to being pre-recorded and having the digital art and video production skills of League of Rockets at the helm. When I watched day one of the tourney, I thought it was weird that almost all the spectator view was in player view, but I got used to it over time as usual. Although I think auto cam or some variation is good for viewers that want to watch games like a team sport, viewing the matches in player view gets intense as well. You get to see what a player is doing from their point of view, which can help one learn a thing or two. Alongside watching the matches in player view, an icon appears on the bottom left of the screen, indicating who the player is. The way the indicator is designed reminds me of the old FIFA games I used to play. Although a large majority of the spectator view is in player view, there's also another spectator view that is usually not used in tournaments. Occasionally, the spectator view appears to switch to fly camera with ball being focused. I can't fully confirm that it was focused on the ball, but it's definitely in fly camera while being focused on something. I have mixed thoughts on the camera being switched to fly occasionally. At some points, it looked pretty impressive, kind of made me want to, see it a bit longer, but there have been some moments where I felt pretty sick while seeing that camera view, usually when the camera moves too much. The good moments of the fly camera were when a big clear was happening or a face-off was occurring. Instead of the usual in-game goal replay when the goal scores, the replay of the goal is shown in free cam mode, angled in a certain way depending on the shot, which kind of causes some cool moments. They even got this one replay of this very cool save that was made in one game. Overall, I was pleased by the production quality. Graphics or stats look similar to the ones you'd see at a World Cup match on television. The 12 Titans had better structure from a storytelling point of view, but the World Cup has me more invested in these teams. The matches really gave off that World Cup feel. With that done, let's talk about the World Cup teams and matches. I was pleased to see players from other countries we usually don't get to see It was nice to see countries like Brazil, Japan, and Australia compete. Australia seemed like the weaker team out of the three. In my opinion, those sea guys always seemed kind of stiff for their air movements, with their car movements in the air. I mean, they do have good moments, but it looks like they need a lot of work on their aerial mechanics if they want to be more effective, especially with the way they play. Japan was a team I was very interested in seeing, but they were only like slightly better than Australia overall. And even though they had some good moments, they also had some pretty bad moments as well in the group stages. I mean, they had some impressive matches, but at the same time, it's like mm, they seem like only like slightly more mechanical than Australia. Brazil was definitely the strongest compared to Australia and Japan, though. I mean, they were just going straight up toe to toe against EU teams in the group. They were like really great in the group stages of the tournament. I mean, I won't spoil how well they do because I don't want to have too many spoilers around here. But if you haven't seen the World Cup yet, I would recommend watching Brazil play. Hopefully, South America will one day get a chance to play in RLCS. Most of the other teams in the World Cup were from Europe, aside from Canada and the United States. The Canada roster was a pretty cool selection, given that JNAP, Squishy, and Timmy are all explosive players on the field. The Canada team was very similar to England, which had Doomsy, Devo, and Bluey, each who could go off at any moment, which is something that Doomsy did do. He had one more where he did went off. He really went off, but they kind of had their ups and downs. Good number of teams had familiar faces on there, while some were unfamiliar to the top tier Rocket League scene. While watching the matches, you couldn't guarantee the best team on paper would win. A good number of close matches and upsets occurred throughout the competition. Although that was the case, there were some games that were just like complete slaughterfest. Some of the matches were disappointing to watch. While watching the tournament, I felt that the most threatening team was France. The roster of K-Dop, Fairy Peak, and Mount were a dangerous bunch. Although I don't recall seeing Mount in any big tournaments, he really stepped it up in the tournament. I mean, K-Dop and Fairy Peak had very great synergy since they played in Season 3 of RLCS, but still, it's like, Mount did a good job filling in and played very well with the team. Countries like England, Finland, USA were great, but while I was watching, I didn't feel like they were unbeatable, even though a good number of them were really, really good. It just seemed like there's no way they can win it. Scotland did not really live up to expectations at all, though. I mean, they had a stacked roster that was pretty good on paper with Scrubkilla, Marky Doodah, and Mystic, but the results just didn't match the pedigree. I mean, Australia was pretty bad, but the expectations were very low compared to Scotland, which is why I would have to say that Scotland was the most disappointing team in the tournament. But hey, there were a lot of things that could have came to that reason why. In terms of team intros, I felt like Italy was the best. It was definitely the best because he had Cooks here and his Batmobiles flying around. Yeah, I mean, his two teammates had Batmobiles, and they're busy just like carrying the ball, floating in the air. But it was pretty unfortunate that Cooks here didn't have many people to choose from in Italy. Felt like that his teammates weren't exactly up to his level, really. But still, I loved watching them play. Overall, I was on the edge of my seat for most matches, but felt sad for teams who got blown out. It was pretty unfortunate for some of those teams. And obviously, I was sitting in my computer rooting for USA like crazy, like the USA NA fanboy I am, hoping they wouldn't screw things up because that's kind of my mindset. I have to say the USA really impressed me, especially on the defensive end. Fireburner was pretty good with scoring, and each player did a good job with defense. There wasn't like any rotation issues or anything like how you'd expect like on a Kronovi team. Now, you may be wondering, for some odd reason, is the World Cup worth watching? And a different question, is it better than 12 Titans? Well, I'd obviously have to say yes to the first question because it's top tier Rocket League. But if I were to decide between the 12 Titans and World Cup, that requires a more in-depth response. World Cup lacks in story and narration compared to the 12 Titans, but makes up for it by having more intense matches. In the World Cup, it feels like the players are playing for something more meaningful than what was earned in the 12 Titans. The Titans was more like a disembodied voice telling a story of competitors fighting to see who is the strongest. But in the World Cup, they are fighting for something greater than themselves. The players are competing for the country and to win a trophy. Though the two tournaments have different atmospheres, if you want a Rocket League bedtime story, 12 Titans is for you. If you want some spectacular 3v3 Rocket League action, and the World Cup is for you. You can also watch both, of course, but you can find the 12 Titans on the League of Rockets YouTube channel and find the World Cup on Badpanda GG. Hope y'all enjoyed the review.